Pilot Topics is sponsored by avtutorials.com. They offer interactive, easy-to-learn pilot training for Windows, Mac, and iPad. Now, let's join Steve and Russ.
Welcome to Quick Pilot Topics, episode number 7. I'm Steve, an airline pilot, flight instructor, flight engineer, a previous examiner, and an A&P mechanic. I'm joined today by my brother Russ, and he is an awesome asker of questions about aviation. So, Russ, what do you got today?
So, engine failure after takeoff in a single-engine plane is a big deal.
That's right, it really is.
And there was a high-profile accident recently where a celebrity was at the controls of a vintage plane that lost power after takeoff.
Yeah, and although the investigation details haven't been released as of this discussion, it would appear that the pilot did a good job of managing the emergency and flying the airplane.
But there are a lot of pilots who don't manage such an emergency as best as possible, or it seems like they might make poor decisions. What really makes the difference between a successful forced landing with an engine failure after takeoff and an unsuccessful one?
First, control of the airplane is the main factor in conducting a safe emergency landing. This means establishing and maintaining best glide speed. Next, sufficient altitude is a big factor. It gives you more time to consider the best option. When pilots fail to maintain airspeed and control of the airplane, the results are almost always disastrous.
So, what is the biggest mistake pilots make with an engine failure after takeoff?
When the engine fails and the airplane's altitude is less than that required for a safe return to the airport, the pilot should not attempt a turn back to the airport. But for some reason, it continues to be a tempting option for pilots. Perhaps a certain amount of "I gotta get back where it's safe" mindset instantly sets in, causing the pilot to turn back. But if a turn is made with insufficient altitude, it almost always results in a loss of airspeed and control, and then the resulting crash.
So, what should a pilot do immediately when the engine quits with insufficient altitude to turn back?
First, the nose must be lowered with prompt attention to establishing proper glide speed. This is a speed that every pilot should know instantly by memory. It might take a very assertive attempt to lower the nose, which you can't be afraid to do. You've also got to trim for that glide speed. It'll help you maintain control so that you can focus on the next tasks. Next, selection of a field, either directly ahead or slightly to either side of the takeoff path, should be made. You've only got seconds to make a decision, so this is no time to get paralyzed with indecision. You might have to pick your best option and then stick with it.
What happens if the pilot tries a turn? Why does that often lead to an accident?
Well, consider this. The takeoff was probably made into the wind. Now the pilot is making a downwind turn, which increases the ground speed. This rushes the pilot, and this could mislead the pilot into raising the nose in an attempt to reduce this misleading increase of speed. Of course, this is the exact wrong thing to do. Best glide speed has to be maintained. The turn back may require more than a 180-degree turn, and this takes time, which takes altitude. If you don't have the altitude, it just won't work out. Finally, in a panicked attempt to get back, especially with the downwind turn, it's possible to inadvertently apply inside rudder and outside aileron while raising the nose to avoid the ground. This can put the airplane into a sudden stall and or spin, and with only a few hundred feet or less, it just isn't recoverable. The airplane will impact completely out of control.
So, what is a safe altitude to turn back?
It depends on the airplane. The best recommendation is to find an instructor who is qualified and knowledgeable about your aircraft type. Then, at a safe practice altitude, such as 3,000 or 4,000 feet AGL, idle power can be set, and remember to apply carb heat if necessary, and the gear and prop can be configured as necessary for the airplane type. Focusing on establishing best glide speed, a 180-degree turn or more can be made, and then note how much altitude is lost. Once you've got that altitude figure, pad it by an extra 25%. The reason is that actual conditions at the time of an engine failure might involve higher winds, the distance traveled during the initial climb might differ, and the weight of the airplane affects gliding capability. This will give you a fairly decent decision height under which you should never attempt to turn back to the field.
Okay, that's really important. You might not have much time to make a decision, so having that decision height already established before you take off sounds like a good idea.
Exactly. Before takeoff, you've got to add that decision height to the field elevation, and you've got to commit yourself that if the engine fails below that altitude, you're going to have to pick a spot either straight ahead or slightly left or right of the takeoff path. Again, though, airspeed control is the most important factor, especially in the turn. Don't be afraid to assertively lower the nose, establish best glide speed, and trim, trim, trim. Getting that done will help you focus on the best place to land the airplane. And hopefully, it'll be one that you can walk away from.
Okay.
Yeah. So, very important topic. Thanks for listening, everybody. We appreciate you tuning in, and we hope that you catch us on the next episode of Quick Pilot Topics.
Visit avtutorials.com for a free 2-hour ebook audiobook titled 12 Easy Ways Pilots Get in Trouble. Remember to listen next week, and happy flying!